everyone, Angela here. Life can be challenging. Trust me, I get it. However, I have learned we can either view the opposition or value the opportunity. Ponder on the problem or praise the potential. Focus on the situation or find the solution. Despite the current circumstances you're going through, I invite you to join me today as we embark on a grand adventure to discover the reasons why it's a good time to be you.
Here's the encourager herself, making every day a good day, Angela Henderson.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here today. Thank you for being with us. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's a good time to be you. Yes, and it is. We have a wonderful show for you today. We have with us the Vice President of the First National Bank here in Charleston, South Carolina. And he is just going to be sharing his stories with us, growing up in a pastoral home. Now, I can relate to a lot of these things because I, too, grew up in a pastoral home, as well as our producer. And so just in reminiscing, as Kevin was sharing some of his stories, we can also kind of relate to those things. You know, they always say the pastor's kids are the worst, but I never liked that stigma. You know, I believe it takes special people to grow up in a pastoral home. And so today we're going to meet one of those very special people, Mr. Kevin Simmons, so don't go away. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, Angela here, just wanting to encourage you to pick up my new book. It's a good time to be you. You can find it on angeladhenderson.com or amazon.com. But this is a book that you definitely need. Let me help coach you so that you can know how to turn perils into pearls and trauma into treasures. You know, life is challenging and I kind of understand that. But in the pages of this book, you are going to realize that you are created in His image. Go figure out. What about choosing joy? That should be a given. Gethsemane. Not too sure about that one, Angela. How about approved? That's something that we all want. From prison to palace. Let me show you how to get out of prison and live in the palace. Sounds of the season. You've got a season in your life, a great season ahead of you. Listen for the sound so you can pick up on it. The joys of the journey to somewhere. You know, it's not just the destiny, but it's the joy of the journey. Hey, how about as for me and my house? You can make that declaration and you and your family can serve the Lord. Burn the boats. Listen, if you want to take the island, you gotta burn the boats. Get rid of all your excuses and learn to fly like an eagle. You want to get this book today so that you can move forward in all the things that God has for you. Don't waste another day being down and discouraged and depressed. You got to know, my friend, that it truly is a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We're glad you're here today. Now let's give a warm welcome to our friend, Mr. Kevin Simmons. Kevin, come on out. It's a good time to be you. Welcome. We are so glad you're here today. Thank you for being with us. Join us here in the comfy chairs, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, and we're super excited. We know that you're a very busy person. You have a very important job being the vice president of a prominent bank here in the Low Country. But we thank you for sharing your time with us.
Not a problem. Glad to be here.
We are going to be talking a little bit about your upbringing and growing up in a pastoral home and kind of what that was like for you. So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from downtown Charleston.
Okay.
The west side of downtown
All right.
Charleston, so right on the peninsula.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
So how was that growing up?
It was awesome. I had a lot of friends that lived in my neighborhood.
I love it.
And growing up in a pastoral home, you said exactly, it was a very unique experience.
Yes. You know, that was something that we moved around a lot, and I think you had shared you did as well.
Yes.
But in the process of moving, that was one thing that you did have the opportunity to do, was to make a lot of friends along the way. You
Absolutely.
know, many different cultures as well. And what were some of the places that were?
Absolutely.
Where were they?
Yeah, my dad was an AME pastor, African Methodist Episcopal, and we actually lived in Charleston. However, he pastored churches in Myrtle Beach, Murrells Inlet, Hemingway, South Carolina, Sumter, all over
Wow.
South Carolina. So Sundays for us would be getting up early in the morning and returning home late at night. So
I believe that. Now, did you guys, with your upbringing and in the churches that you pastored, was your home close to the church or like next door to the church, or did you travel away?
Some of the churches provided housing for us where we could spend the night, but we were more so metropolitan families, so we kind of did the rule as much as we could,
Right.
but we traveled, we drove
Yeah.
every Sunday and during the week when needed. So yes.
You know, it's so funny. I remember my dad in a couple of the churches, but especially the first one that he pastored. We did live beside the church, but my father would have to get up early Sunday morning. He would go pick up his congregation, and then he would bring them to
Oh, wow.
church. He would minister to them, and then he'd load them back up in
Take 'em back
the
home.
blue Ford station wagon and take them all home. So, you
Yes.
know, he had a captive audience, you
Yes.
know. I mean, he
Yes.
brought them, and then he took them back.
That was service.
So,
That was service.
yeah, so
Yes.
it was usually an all-day affair
Yes.
for us as well in many different ways.
Yes.
And so what were some of your experiences in the churches being a pastor's kid?
I did a lot of things with the youth department. We did a lot of trips, a lot of outside activities, a lot of Bible study, a lot of summer things that we did to stay together and stay connected as a church and in the youth. So just coming up and seeing how my dad operated amongst the people. One thing that I do love about it, he used to let me carry his briefcase.
Oh,
And that was a big honor.
wow.
Being 5, 6, 7 years old, because I brought his briefcase to the front of the church
Oh,
and
how neat.
laid it out for him, and I would actually sit there and just watch him as he operated and guided the meetings. And that's something I always wanted to do, was to be a leader of people. So
You know, my father was very impressionable in my life at that time, too. And I understand what you're saying about wanting to be a leader. I would watch him as he would do certain things. And for me, I always wanted to be a Sunday school teacher, you know, because I just always thought, yeah, you'd carry in your Sunday school literature, you
Right,
know, and I
right.
liked working with little kids. And so, yeah, I just thought that was the greatest thing. And here I was, a little kid myself, you know, but I felt I was able to assist one of the youth that was teaching the smaller kids. And that made me feel really big,
Right.
and it made me feel really important, you
Awesome.
know, in the church to be able to do that. So now that we have shared our fond memories,
Yes.
and all the little protocols and systems that we reflected on and we
Yes,
remember,
yes.
when we get back, we're going to
Yes.
share like the real us,
The
okay,
real us.
and what we really went through. So don't go away. There's a lot more to this story, and we'll be back in a few minutes. As a leader, you are a broker of gifts. So whether you are a professional, a business owner, or a ministerial leader, I would love to accompany you in transforming your ordinary staff into an extraordinary team through leadership development, team building, and personal discovery. You will learn the amazing gifts, skills, and talents that each of you have and know how to bring them together in order to do great things. So reach out to me at angeladhenderson.com and let's begin your amazing adventure today. And remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We are so glad that you're with us today. We have Mr. Kevin Simmons, Vice President of the First National Bank here in Charleston, and he is just sharing with us his experience growing up in a pastor's home, being a PK, a preacher's kid. And so before the break, we were kind of sharing some of the fond memories that we had, some of the leadership that we learned, you know, growing up in that. But now let's kind of talk about some of the more deeper things as a minister's child. What were some of the things that you experienced and the pressures that you experienced growing up, you know, as a pastor's child in the community?
I would definitely say fighting the stigma that PKs deal with in regards to the outside world. The outside world is looking at us with certain expectations that we cannot fall, that we cannot slip, but that's totally not the case. One great pressure that I felt was trying to always wanting to fit in with the crowd, to let them know that I'm just like you, I think like you, I like the same things as you. So I think that's one thing that's a stronghold for PKs coming up, the ability to want to fit in with everybody else, but you're being grounded and rooted in something else. So
Yes, I believe that too. You know, I think we had an advantage of knowing the Lord at an early age, and so I'm so grateful for that, because like you said, there was always something that would draw us back. There was a roots that was there, and that we were grounded, even though we would, try to spread our wings and sow our wild oats, so to speak. And I remember I had friends in school that asked me one time, like, well, what is it like in your home? I always envision you guys just walking around carrying Bibles all the time or something, And so I really, like you, I would really try to fit in, like, no, we don't do that. We're a regular family. We do what regular families do. And what is a regular family, But I would try to, demonstrate that or portray that as well.
Absolutely.
And so I do understand those pressures. Is there any particular experience that you'd care to share of maybe something that you maybe did or succumbed to, that everybody just thought, oh man, we never thought you would do that as a preacher's kid?
Yeah, the peer pressures that all kids go through to want to take a drink or want to take a smoke or to talk to as many women as you can. So all those pressures, fighting that, and to be a part of a group of guys that could almost turn into a gang type situation. So finding who your friends are and who your real friends are that have your best interests at heart. So that was a struggle at first coming up. But again, having the stronghold of my parents, I had always a good, healthy fear of not crossing the line. And where some of my friends that they did not have that. So
yeah, that's so true. You'd always have this fear. It was like, if God wasn't watching you, you knew Mama was. I mean, it was just one of them things. And so, and Mama knew always where to find you. That was the other thing. And so I totally understand that, and trying to step out. And I know that there's a lot of pressures that pastoral families face as well. And trying to hold up those standards. And I think one of the things, when I wasn't at my best, and when I was giving in to some of the peer pressures, my parents really didn't feel that they had anyone to go to, to turn to discuss, what they were feeling and what they were encountering in their home with a child that, kind of was stepping out and doing some things that they taught were wrong. And so a lot of times I think that's really difficult for pastoral families. And so I'm grateful how God is shifting things, in this day and age that we live in now, and maybe shifting it from traditional church to apostolic, where it's kingdom-mindedness, where even those that minister to us, as the Bible says, that they are treated well, that they're held in highest regard, that they are supported, that they are looked after, and that we make sure they're healthy, because, as they look out for everyone else's, health and well-being.
Absolutely. So,
as a youth in your community, what were some of the things that maybe impacted your decisions that you made where your life was concerned?
Again, I go back to my parents in the stronghold. One thing I always did as a child was I always tried to recruit my friends to church.
Good for you.
I was a young recruiter. And
I wished I had done that. That's good.
I was a young, because I grew up, my parents had me in their mid-40s. So my brothers and my sisters, they were elderly, and they were out of the house. So I grew up pretty much like an only child. So I always recruited people into my circle. And I sometimes do that a lot today.
Good for you.
But I was always a recruiter, asking my friends, come to church, it's fun. And I tried to do everything I could to get them to be in worship, but I didn't really know the bigger picture of what I was doing. I was ministering to them.
Yes, you were. And that was that leadership that was rising up inside of you. My leadership candle was kind of hidden under a bush for a while. So I became a follower more than a leader at that stage, in my life. And but that's really good that you did that, and that you stepped out and invited them into your circle, rather than feeling, giving into or succumbing to pressure that would pull you into their circles, because you had something far better to offer them, for sure. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to continue with Kevin's journey and see how, even though he grew up in a pastoral home, that's not necessarily what he's doing today, but it's still ministry, as he has shared with us. So we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, everyone. Just in case you are just now joining us, we are with Kevin Simmons here. He is the Vice President of First National Bank in Charleston, and he is just sharing with us his story of just walking through being brought up in a pastoral home and what ministry was like for him as a child. And now, Kevin, in this process, we talked about community, and we talked about how community kind of formed some of the decisions and the choices that you made. But what motivated you to excel in life? Did you have mentors along the way?
I did. Actually, my dad was obviously my biggest mentor, Reverend E.O. Simmons, the late Reverend E.O. Simmons. His best friend, Reverend Presiding Elder Elonzo Middleton. And most recently, who we just funeralized on this Saturday, Reverend Roger L. Washington. Those gentlemen were strongholds on me. I really looked up to them, and they brought so much value and teaching to my life to be your own person and not to follow the crowd. Speak your mind.
That is amazing.
Yes.
Now, when you were being mentored by these men who are obviously ministers themselves, did you feel that they were imparting religious rules and regulations on you, or was it sound word, from the Bible? What was it that you were gleaning from them?
I think it was a combination of all of it. My dad is funny stories. I never knew what I would get from him, if I would get the dad or if I would get the preacher.
I know.
So that was, it was hilarious at times, because he would always give you the opposite of what you think you would get. And with the other, I could actually go and talk to them as from a little boy about anything from a grown man. And I can see our conversations developing the older I got and the more they let me in to their circles. So they kind of taught me life and how to see it in its perspective from growing up into manhood. But they told me and gave me a lot of great stories. Great stories.
That sounds so amazing. That was one thing. I always had a close relationship with my parents, and I had the highest regard, for my mom and my dad, and I still do, which they are now retired. But you really don't retire, from ministry. You're constantly giving, and you're constantly serving. And my dad, even though now he's not pastoring a church, so to speak, he will still go in and fill in for other ministers, or he has opportunities to speak and share. But I always did. I always held them in highest regard, and I always, honored my dad. And he has this one Bible that I remember my entire life living in the house with them. And my dad would always use this Bible to preach with, to preach his sermons and for his daily devotions. And there'd be times where he didn't realize I was watching him or in the wee hours of the morning while he was having his alone time with the Lord. And I would watch him as he would close that Bible and he'd kiss it. Or he would take oil and, rub the outside of the leather, binding of it. And I thought, that is so weird. Why is he doing that, But as I became an adult, I understood, because it was also out of that same Bible that he would teach us every night our family devotions. And he, even before we could read, he would speak it to us and we would recite it back to him. And that's how we learned, memory verses and stories and things of that nature. And so I found myself asking him one day that should anything happen to him, I wanted that Bible.
Absolutely.
And he told me, he says, no one's ever asked me that before. And I told him, I said, it's got your sermons in it, things that you heard from God that you wrote down, you took notes on. And I said, I want that. I want that to keep with me, and so that is supposed to be mine. He's not gone anywhere yet. And I'm most grateful, and I thank God for that. But
before we segue, let me just mention my mom, who is my heartbeat, my biggest cheerleader, and my new bride, Tiffany. So I have to put them in there as well. But my mom is my biggest cheerleader from day one. And you're talking about loyal, very, very loyal person to me. And again, without my parents, I had the best set of parents that anyone could ever have. And I thought a lot that they were very strict on me. But today I know why they did the things they did for me to end up in the position I'm in right now. So I thank them for my mom and dad. Absolutely.
Exactly. Back in those days, we didn't appreciate the upbringing that we were getting. But when we look back now, we understand it. And I remember even as a parent myself, the Lord checked me. and he told me, he said, Angela, he says, every night your father had devotions with you and taught you the word, and you've not done that with your children.
Yeah.
And it was just like my heart was broken when he spoke that to me, because it was true. And I was reading Joshua when Joshua was saying, take this word and don't let it depart from your lips, and, and it was just like, oh my goodness, we have not done that.
Right.
And so then we started forming that family habit of doing it. But I appreciated it then because the word is so powerful, and that foundation that we have in it, it helps us to make good decisions and good choices. So with that being said, we're getting ready to take another break.
Sure.
And we're so grateful for our heritage and for our upbringing. And we're going to hear a little bit more about some of the other decisions that Kevin made and where it took him in the area of banking and making that career choice. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, Angela here. Just wanting to invite you to share your story with us. You know, we all have times in our lives when it just seemed like it was impossible. But then there was that moment of breakthrough. And just maybe your story was meant to be shared and imparted to be able to encourage and uplift others. Well, we would love to be able to give you that opportunity. So how about send your story into us at itsagoodtimetobeyou@gmail.com for consideration. We would love the opportunity to be able to bring you up on stage so that you can do what you were designed to do, and that was to be an encouragement to those around you. You know, sometimes you just can't make this stuff up, but when it happens, we want the world to know about it. So again, reach out to us at itsagoodtimetobeyou@gmail.com and send in that story for us to consider. And remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad that you're with us today. And we've had an interesting time here with Kevin Simmons, just sharing about the lives of PK. And while we were on our break, you know, we were just talking about how we might not have always appreciated the upbringing at the time. But, you know, we're so grateful for the foundation that our parents laid for us. And we just wish that everybody had what we had growing up, and how amazing that is. We're so grateful for our families. So how did you find your interest in banking?
I actually think banking found me. My dad was always a businessman outside of pastoring, and he was very good with numbers and money.
Okay.
And when I went to USC in Columbia, University of South Carolina, I majored in business. And in search of a career, the ones that kept coming back to me were the banking industry. So started with Wachovia Bank as my first position out of college, and then it's just taken off since that time.
Now, growing up, were you good with math or with numbers or accounting, or what did that look like for you?
Yes, I was. I remember my dad opening me an account at about 4 years old, sitting me on the counter and making me fill out my own deposit ticket.
I love that.
I remember those stories.
That is so cool. So not only was he empowering you with the word, but he was also empowering you with some life skills and also sharpening some entrepreneurial skills. You know, in you. How amazing is that? So were you a saver or a spender?
I was both. But his thing was, you know, you make $1, save a quarter. That was his basic line of, you make $1, you save a quarter. So he embedded that into me over time, because you see flashy things, you want to go out and get it. But it propelled me to always work. And if I wanted something, I would go work to get it. And not wait on it. So, you
know, and I recall my mom was that way. If there was growing up as a child, you know, you didn't just get every day. You know, every time you went to the store, you know, can I have this? Can I have that? And it ends up in the buggy, and you know, you have it. It was either like birthdays or holidays is when you got what it was that your heart desired. And then my mom's favorite phrase for us was, "We'll save your money and buy you one." Save your money and buy you one. And so they taught us to save money growing up with a goal in mind as to how we were going to use that or how we were going to spend that. And so it was always exciting once we had saved up our funds, Mom was faithful. She kept her word. She would take us to the store, or back in those days we had catalogs. We
Right.
didn't have online shopping. That wasn't even, we weren't even dreaming and envisioning of stuff like
Right.
that. But, and we would order it or what have you, and be able to get what we wanted. And we appreciated it a lot more.
Right.
Because we had to earn that.
Yes.
We had
Yeah.
to take whatever that money was that we worked for and go out and save that and then go get it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was some really good, strong upbringing.
Oh, yes.
And now, what about with like your tithe and your offering? Was that something that you guys were big on doing as well?
Obviously, in our household, we were.
Yes.
So definitely giving 10% of what your earnings were. And I always asked my dad, should I give 10% of my gross or my net?
The big challenge.
That was
The big
always,
debate.
a big debate there. But, and with tithing, you have to grow into that because life brings you different challenges.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'll catch the next one because I need to do this time. And then you figure out that life happens again.
Yeah.
And you can go in that cycle. So you just take that off of the top
Right.
and just go from there, and you're working with less. So that's the best way to do it.
Exactly. Give God first,
Give Him
right?
first.
The first
Give Him
fruits.
first.
That's good. So how does your faith play a role in what you do today in the banking business?
Serving. I love serving people. No matter what my title becomes in the banking industry, I told myself that I always wanted to work amongst the people.
Yeah.
I will never be
Beautiful.
too big amongst the people. So for my clients, they all have my cell phone numbers.
Oh my
And
goodness. how
some of them will
nice.
just call me on the weekend just to ask me, what's my balance?
I love it.
So that's that personal connection that they have with me, even though I'm not in that transition phase doing
Yeah.
that much more. But I just love working amongst the people and serving them. So
That is such a beautiful heart, and I know that that's a part of your upbringing
Yes.
that was instilled inside of you. So when did you realize that it was a good time to be you?
I would probably say I came into my own a few years ago when the Lord brought me closer to the church. And I grew up as a very, I wouldn't say very, but I was shy. I would just like to not be in the front. And I remember God working in my life that I used to sit at the very last seat in the church. And then He brought me to the middle of the church, and He brought me to the front of the church.
Wow.
And then I said, I'll never sing in a choir. And now I direct our male choir at church. And I actually preached my first sermon just 2 years ago before the pandemic. So He's brought me a long way in developing. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for just allowing the work of the Lord to be a continual progression in your life and you becoming the person that God's designed you to be. And you're taking your faith and your upbringing and you're bringing it into the mountain of business,
Yes.
and serving people on that mountain and just being a great example of what the kingdom is supposed to be like.
Right.
So thank you so much
Yes.
for what you do, Kevin. And we
Yes.
are so honored that you were with us today and
Not a
just
problem.
sharing with us. How about at the count of three, we let everyone know out there it's a good time to be you, okay?
Alrighty.
1, 2, 3. It's
It's
a good time to be you. Hey everyone, Angela here. If you like today's show, well, there is much, much more. So I invite you to watch us each week right here on your local CTN channel. And remember, it's a good time to be you.